Good afternoon, YouTube. Today we're going to be unboxing the S&B Particle Separator for the Polaris RZR Pro XP, and this is the new particle separator that they came out with. I know there's a video install online from S&B, but we're going to go ahead and throw one up as well. Kind of a user interface. I think they do their video in about 10 minutes, and we all know that things take longer than that. So what we'll do is go ahead and pull the items out of the box, let you check them out, let you see what's involved with the installation of the S&B Particle Separator. And we're going to be going and replacing, this is the stock tube. We just went and threw this back on for comparison there. We were running the aftermarket Assassin's tube originally, sold that to a friend. But we'll be putting that on the S&B Particle Separator here, and we'll gauge how tough of an install it is. I believe it's going to be pretty much straightforward. I'm guessing maybe a 2-hour install, so obviously we're not going to do a 2-hour video, but we'll tell you any issues that we run into and things to take note of when you're installing a particle separator on a Pro XP. All right, stay tuned. All right, let's see what we got in the box. Our set of instructions. Looks fairly detailed. Nice pictures. Yeah, it looks like some of the center console's got to come out, which is always fun. Everyone loves taking the center console out on the Pros. This is a rubber, more than likely a rubber seal, rubber gasket. This is going to be likely the air intake portion. The rubber gasket's probably going to go into there like that. Air is going to get pulled into these intakes. This is the S&B, all the little intake turbines there. You can see the fans in here. The back side in there. Obviously pulls it through, swirls, spits the dirt out here, sends the clean air to the engine. Yep. You can definitely see the fan up in here. This is where the clean air comes through. This is the airflow tube, hard plastic, so it's will not collapse, so that's good. The rubber connector for the hose areas here, and this as well for the hose area here, more than likely. These are all our mounting brackets and our clamps. Yep, clamps. Metal brackets, mounting brackets. Yep, all mounting brackets in this one, and some clamps. This is a foam seal, more than likely. And here's our wiring harnesses that come with it. Zip ties as well. Yep, zip ties and wiring harnesses, and you can see here this is the more than likely going to go all the way up to the bus bar up front in the rig in the unit. So someone that's pretty technical and has done everything to this, the exhaust, the shock therapy, dual rate suspension, all of the upgrades to this I've done myself. Here, I mean, just some standard stuff that the dealership did, like installed the stereo system, but shock therapy and the exhaust, pretty technical when it comes to doing some installations on this. I'll give you the honest opinion on how hard this is to install, and if a semi-technical person, not a auto mechanic type, can get this done, and how long it takes approximately. So we'll kind of give you some shots along the way and issues that we come up with. Problems that we had, some advice if we can give it to you and you're doing your install. We'll let you know. Alright, today we started disassembly of the Pro XP for the S&B Particle Separator installation. So we went ahead and removed the bed, 4 bolts, T40s, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then pulled the seats out. Easy removal, removed the back partition or the separator there, the upper so far. We removed this quarter panel piece here, and that was merely in there with 2 bolts, T40 bolts holding it from the inside here, and then 1 down front from here, and then 3 push pins very similar to this right here underneath the fender felt, and it just lifted right out. Now we're going to go ahead and proceed with our next steps and be removing this piece right here. Just take note, we do have the mud busters on here, +1. We more than likely will have to remove this one here, which is just a couple of probably like 8 bolts or screws. So we'll go ahead and we'll get that removed as well, and then move on to our next steps. All right, we went ahead and just standing here, we removed the side panel piece. We remove our mud buster fender flare, and we removed the quarter panel. You see where the gas cap goes right in there. So remove the whole quarter panel. Mainly it's just push pins and T40 bits. This is what the unit looks like currently without the side panel. So we can clearly get to this piece here. Gas can, grommet still stays intact. That stays on the unit. Yeah, so we can go ahead and start working on removing this piece next, and there will be wiring that needs to route all the way to the front to the bus bar up under the dash, apparently, if we're following the instructions correctly. So we're going to go ahead and just keep working our way down the list and keep removing some pieces until we get to the installation steps. All right, we have a little update here. They want us to go ahead and remove the center console in order to run the harness wire up and through here. Very simple instructions to remove the center console. I know a lot of people out there have a hard time with it. Easiest way to describe removing the center console is just kind of remove the 2 back panels here with the twist pieces. The bolts to remove the rear storage compartment. I think people know where that's at. And then that leaves you with what you see here. There's 2 push pins here, 1 on each side. Go ahead and remove those push pins. There's 8 bolts that hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 right there. Go ahead and remove those 8 bolts. And then right here is the fuse box. What you're going to do is go ahead and remove, this is the fuse box. Go ahead and remove the top bolt on the fuse box and loosen the bottom one. Don't take it out, just loosen it. So you can pivot this up and get underneath it. There are push pin underneath there that you got to take out. So just use a push pin tool and pop the push pin out on that. And then you're going to go ahead and repeat those steps for the other side. And then the console simply can be removed. Unfortunately, if you are a stage 4 Rockford Fosgate system holder in your vehicle with a subwoofer, you can't get to the push pins on this side. The same 2 push pins are over here. There's one right here that I can feel with my finger, which could be possible to get. But imagine there's another one right up in here, because the instructions clearly say to remove the 2 push pins, and you can't get in there with the Fosgate system, the subwoofer, to get that second push pin. Other than that, simple procedures for this side as well. You do have to disconnect the cigarette adapter or the charger 12 volt, remove the 8 pins or the 8 screws, and then those 2 push pins up top. But one able to do that, and I'm not going to uninstall the Fosgate to get in there. So we're going to see if we can't fish it up through there. That we do have most that side undone and can get our hands up under there to get under the dash. So we're going to try to route it that way and see how we do. It was fun getting this, the original airbox air intake out. It was a little more difficult because we have the tire carrier up here, the brackets on here, they poke out and protrude a little bit, so you can't get full mobility with the box. So we had to kind of use a little rubber mallet and tap it out. I removed the back windshield because there was bolts down there not allowing it to flex when you were pulling on this out. So just a little bit of hiccup that we ran into there. You can see we're getting ready to actually put the airbox in, the S&B Particle Separator. We have this mounted in there. We have our brackets installed. Hopefully they got them in the right way. They just seem right there. They're a little loose right now, so we can get the proper fit in. But we have the airbox in. The brackets are tightened down. As you can see here, bracket. The screws on the back have all been tightened. Just getting the right tools for the right job, just to make sure you can get it all. You see you got to get in here and get some screws tightened down in there, here, and then back side underneath the bracket here with the pins, as you can see right there. Just being able to get in there and get stuff tightened down. And I'm gonna have to move that. Just leave it there. Yeah, so we're gonna get the airbox in, mount it up there, and go on to next steps. Yeah, it's coming along. It's following the directions, taking your time. No real issues we've run into yet, outside of just having to take the whole machine apart, pretty much, just to get it in. And we did run into the issue where we couldn't take the console out, but we haven't reached that point yet to determine how hard it's going to be to route the cables up. But I've routed cables before for my whips without taking the center console out. Nothing more than what you've seen here, just taking all the bolts out, and you can get up along the side of that to get the wires and the wiring harness, fish it up through there. So that's pretty easy. And we're going to go around, we're going to do the driver's side, because we've unsecured the fuse box on the one side so we can pivot it up and reach our hand back down in there and grab anything we're trying to pass through. Then we can work our way through here and do any zip tying we need to keep it out of the way of any parts in there. Little piece of advice we've come to realize here when we're doing this installation here with the S&B Particle Filter Separator is make sure you leave your nuts and bolts. Don't tighten any of them up when you're making the installation of this. You want to make sure that everything is loose, because nothing kind of fits when you start tightening up the brackets in the back. When I started putting on the airbox for the front, because it smashes onto this and sucks down to it, the bolts don't line up here, the bolts don't line up here, the back bolts don't line up. Nothing lines up. So make sure all your bolts, your nuts are loose put everything on, tighten them loosely so you get proper alignment and everything kind of settles in place, and then tighten down to specifications for the bolts and the nuts that you have on the system here. You will consistently fight the brackets and the bolts trying to get them lined up unless everything's loose. So just keep that in mind when you're doing the installation. Tighten nothing up. It does state to tighten nothing up. When you follow the instructions for the pamphlet, they're completely different than the instructions on the video. The video has installing everything backwards. The instructions have you installing everything frontwards. Just look at both. Look what makes sense when you're doing the installation. I've been following more of the video installation and reviewing the printed installation just because the printed diagrams are not the best. I mean, they're good, but I mean, you can't make out too much crap in the pictures. I mean, when you're looking at some, I mean, look at that. I mean, here, let's see here. I mean, you can't make too much out on that. I mean, come on. It's hard to make that out. I just look at all the information when you're doing your installations and, you know, base it on that. I mean, we've got this in, it's rock solid. I mean, it's shaking the whole side-by-side. So it's going to be firm and sturdy in there. But we are going to have to loosen some of the bolts when we put the front side on with the motor and the little spin turbine things on there. These brackets here on the back side are off just a little bit. So we'll have to loosen this bracket back up to get it to come out a little bit so we can bolt these 2 bolts in, and then we'll tighten this one back down at the end. But like I'm saying, just make sure that your bolts are on loose and you should be fine from there forward. So we have the air box in. Like I said, make sure everything's tight. Rock solid, nothing moves. It's in there. We installed our air tube. It's easier to install in the front first and then just pops right in on the back. So these are all tightened up. Those are all tightened up. And this is a very, very hard plastic, so you need to worry about that collapsing. And I assume it's got the same airflow as the others. We'll see what. I don't think I've ever ran into an issue where we ran out of air to the engine on this yet. So we're just running a moderate tune, so I don't think it'll be a big deal. Next steps here, we installed the ignition sensor right here. You see it goes on to the orange wire, and it just loosely clamps over the wire. It doesn't penetrate it. It just clamps onto the wire. You see it's kind of loose there, so just make sure we got a little gap there. It's nice little slack, so it just sits over the wire and sense probably the ignition RPMs that are coming out of it to adjust the fan speeds appropriately. So we'll see how that works. I just loosely clamped it there, ran the wire up, and we're going to pull it through, and then we're going to continue with our wiring up through the center console and then up through the end of the dash. All right, next update is we already did the ignition coil, the ignition installation there for the sensor. Went ahead and routed the cables down through the the driver's side, which was the easier of the 2 installations. Now we pulled the side out and threaded it up, zip tied it up to the bracket on the inside there. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see here. Zip tied it up to the bracket there, ran it through, down along the side there, bunched it up here. They had it bunched up in the engine compartment. I prefer it in here where there's no heat. And ran it through, plugged in the Y connectors. And then they recommend taking the airbox cover off and installing the other seal that they have, which is this one that has a yellow flaky crust on it. I'm not quite sure what that is, but we pushed their seal in just like so. Didn't smash it all the way down, put it up to, they got one, as you can see there's about one little rib mark there. We didn't smash it all the way down. We'll let the airbox do that when we clamp it down. So it has a good seal on it. So go ahead and continue to put the airbox cover back on, and we will more than likely start fastening back all of the bolts we took out of the center console, securing that back down. We did plug in up into the dash one of the bus bar connections, as you can see up in there. A little bit dark, but you can see we did plug in a bus bar connection up in there that they had. This big box here is still not quite sure. They didn't mention that yet, that I've got to in the instructions, but I'm sure we'll just tuck that in there. And we'll go ahead and start securing this back up. Before we start putting everything back together, we will obviously fire up the engine, make sure the fan's spinning before we put everything back together, because that would not be good if nothing's working and we got to take it all apart again. So stay tuned. We'll make sure everything's working before we do that. All right, so we went ahead and put the key in and clicked it on one click, and you can hear the fan. And I can feel the air coming out nice and slow out of the port here, blowing it right into the shock. I guess that's fine. But you can hear it. I don't feel any gaps or air leaks coming out of the sides. We'll go ahead and start wrapping up installation on this S&B particle separator and start putting everything back together. Everything is testing out fine. Everything is looking good. Power's on. It's ran through. Cables are out of the way. So we'll start putting everything back together and we'll go from there. All right, next day. Installation is done. As you can see, there's the S&B particle separator. We did have to trim the mud busters right around this area here so it didn't interfere with the tube. I just had to do a little bit of trimming. And it was also harder to get in, get the mud busters back on because there's no room to get your hands up here anymore for the nuts and washers on the other side of this. So it took a little bit to finagle those in there and get them done. But turned out great. Everything came back together nicely. We didn't have any leftover parts, so that's a good thing. So assuming everything went back together the way it should. But yeah, everything turned out good. And like I said, we did do the routed the cable down the driver's side and then zip tied it up through there. Taking the console out was not an option just due to the fact that we had the subwoofer in there, and it would have been a little bit more time consuming to get the subwoofer out to take the console out when we could have just tucked and zip tied it up through the side. So all right, I hope you liked this quick installation video for the S&B particle separator. One thing I would just say that if you're doing this, make sure you take your time. Make sure that all of the brackets that you put up, all the mounting hardware for the actual S&B particle separator, make sure that everything is very loose when you do put it on first, because nothing will line up if any of the bolts or brackets are tight. Things will be off by 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. So just make sure that everything's on there nice and loosely, and then everything should go together fine. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe.